There are very few questions in international basketball that can be answered this cleanly, this empirically, with this kind of documentary precision. The Philippines beats New Zealand when Kai Sotto plays. It does not beat New Zealand when he does not. That is not analysis. That is arithmetic. Gilas Pilipinas owns exactly one victory over the Tall Blacks in major FIBA competition. 1, in a head-to-head record that stretches back years and reads 1-7. That singular triumph came on the evening of November 21, 2024, inside the SM Mall of Asia Arena, before more than 11,000 people who watched a 7'3" young man from Manila dismantle New Zealand's interior completely. 19 points, 10 rebounds, 7 assists. Sotto's line that night wasn't just impressive, it was architectural. He didn't merely score, he built the structure through which Gilas could breathe. And when the final buzzer sounded at 93-89, something shifted. The Philippines had cracked open a door that had been sealed shut for a long time. Then came January 2025. A torn ACL with the Kashigaya Alphas in Japan's B-League. The door swung shut again. And now, as the 2027 FIBA World Cup Asian qualifiers march toward their third and final window in July, Gilas Pilipinas stands at a 2-2 record in Group A, having lost both games in the second window, including a narrow, painful 69-66 defeat to New Zealand on February 26, without their most indispensable player. The road trip that awaits them on July 3 in Auckland is not merely a basketball game. It is, depending on what Kai Sotto's right knee decides to do between now and then, either a genuine competitive moment or a formal exercise in hoping for the best. The stakes reach further than most casual observers understand. The highest-placing Asian team in the 2027 World Cup earns direct entry to the 2028 Los Angeles Olympics. Every game, every possession, every interior matchup carries that weight. This is where things stand. This is what it means. The ACL is basketball's most unforgiving injury. Ask any orthopedic surgeon who has worked with professional athletes and they will tell you the same thing. The ligament heals, yes, but the trust takes longer. The proprioception, that deeply ingrained sense of where your body is in space, that muscle memory that allows a 7'3" man to plant and pivot and explode without conscious thought, that is what the rehabilitation process truly fights to restore. Kai Sotto returned to action with Kashigaya Alphas in Japan's B-League in February 2026, roughly 13 months after the injury. His camp was transparent about the timeline. He was not yet 100%. The Philippines needed him, clearly, but the Philippines also needed him whole. His agent Chow Espaldon said it plainly: focus on recovery, rebuild the rhythm, get right. The second window would pass without him. What the second window revealed, in his absence, was precisely the dimension of basketball that a healthy Sotto occupies. New Zealand out-rebounded Gilas 53-49 in that February 26 loss. That number does not look catastrophic on paper, but understand what it means in context. The Philippines came into that game with June Mar Fajardo, A.J. Edu, and Quinton Milora-Brown, 3 legitimate big men, each with real credentials. Fajardo is a 9-time PBA Most Valuable Player, a force of nature domestically, a man of genuine size and strength who has represented his country for years with distinction. Edu is long and athletic and effective at shot blocking in a way that elevates the entire Gilas defensive architecture. Milora-Brown averaged 9.5 rebounds across the first window against Guam and has the kind of mobility that makes him a problem for most Asian bigs. And yet New Zealand still won the glass. By 4 boards. Now insert a 7'3" center who averaged 12.5 rebounds per game in the 2025 Asia Cup qualifiers, second highest in the entire competition, and recalculate. The margin shifts. The interior conversation changes entirely. Gilas doesn't simply add a rebounder when Sotto plays, it adds a gravitational center that reorganizes the floor around him. His presence in the high post opens driving lanes. His ability to catch and finish at the rim means defenders cannot sag entirely onto the three-point line. His passing, those 7 assists in November 2024 were not an accident, they were the product of a basketball mind that understands angles and timing with unusual sophistication for a player his age, stretches defenses in directions they are not structurally prepared to handle. New Zealand head coach Judd Flavel was candid about all of this after the February victory. He said Sotto is a big part of the puzzle for the Philippines. He noted the 7'3" center's mobility, his dynamism, his capacity to add a dimension to the Gilas offense that fundamentally changes the defensive calculus. Coming from the opposing coach, after a win, that acknowledgement carries weight. Flavel was not being magnanimous in defeat. He was being precise in victory. He understands, perhaps better than most, that his 69-66 margin was a gift wrapped in Sotto's absence. The tactical story of that February 26th game is worth examining carefully because it tells you what Gilas looks like without its anchor. Tim Cone, one of the most accomplished coaches in Philippine basketball history, tried everything his roster could offer. The Tall Blacks clamped down on Justin Brownlee defensively, effectively neutralizing the one player in Gilas' arsenal who can create at will off the dribble at an international level. When Brownlee is contained, Gilas needs interior pressure to relieve the perimeter. They needed someone who could catch in the mid-post and make New Zealand's bigs make a decision. Step up and leave the roller, or drop and leave the face-up jumper. Without Sotto, that pressure never materialized at sufficient volume. The outside shooting of Dwight Ramos, C.J. Perez, and Juan Gomez de Liano kept things close enough that it came down to 3 points, but close is not a destination. Close is a photograph of what might have been. Consider the historical backdrop for a moment. The Philippines has been chasing consistent FIBA relevance across the Asian region for decades. The 2023 World Cup on home soil was a landmark. Gilas hosted the event in Manila and produced moments of legitimate quality, but the structural challenge has always been the same. The Philippines is a nation that loves basketball more deeply, more passionately, more unconditionally than almost any country on earth outside of the United States. But the gene pool for the size required to compete at the highest international level is limited. The country plays a beautiful, fluid, guard-oriented brand of the game, but in the paint, against the Tall Blacks and the Boomers and the Jordans and the Irans of the FIBA world, size matters in ways that talent alone cannot compensate for. Kai Sotto is the exception that the Philippine basketball community has been dreaming about for a generation. He stands 7'3". He moves like a wing. He passes like a playmaker. He was the first Filipino-born player to sign with an NBA organization when the Atlanta Hawks brought him in during the 2021-22 season, a moment of genuine national pride. He chose to represent the Philippines internationally rather than pursue other avenues, a choice that carries meaning in a country where basketball is not merely a sport but a cultural expression, a civic identity. When he plays for Gilas, the team is structurally different in a way that few individual players achieve at the national team level. When he doesn't play, the difference is visible. Felt in the rebounding numbers, felt in the post-up frequencies, felt in the defensive coverages that New Zealand and Australia can deploy without fear of interior punishment. The third window, July 3rd in Auckland, July 6th in Melbourne, is Gilas' road assignment and their qualification crossroads. After the back-to-back losses in the second window, the Philippines now needs at least one win in those two games to secure an outright World Cup berth through the first round. Lose both, and Gilas enters the second round with a 2-4 record, most likely as a lower seed, forced to navigate a group that figures to include Jordan, Iran, and Syria. Unbeaten Jordan in particular has been one of the more quietly formidable stories of this qualifying cycle. The path narrows considerably. The margin for error effectively disappears. Sotto's availability for July remains officially uncertain as of the latest reporting. His club's B-League season wraps in May, which theoretically clears the calendar conflict that made the second window complicated. His ACL recovery was proceeding well enough for him to return to action in Japan. The question is not whether the willingness is there. It clearly is, both from Sotto's side and from the Samahang basketball in Pilipinas, but whether the knee, and more crucially the rhythm, will be where they need to be. 13 months away from Gilas is a long time. The timing of plays, the chemistry with Fajardo and Edu in two big lineups, the instincts developed through repetition, those things require real minutes and real game situations to recalibrate. Coach Tim Cone has already signaled that he is looking at simplifying the Gilas offense for the road window. Simplification, in this context, means reducing the cognitive load on a team that has had inconsistent preparation time and limited windows of collective training. The foreign league players, Ramos, Edu, Milora Brown, Carl Tamayo, will be available earlier in July given their respective league schedules concluding in April and May. That gives Cone more runway than he had before the second window, where the roster was assembled on fairly short notice. But simplification also has limits. New Zealand on their home court in Auckland is not the same proposition as New Zealand at MOA Arena. The Tall Blacks have won in their own building with regularity, and the environment, smaller venue, tighter atmosphere, no Filipino crowd roaring every time a Gilas guard catches the ball in the open court, will demand a team that can execute under duress, with composure. Tohi Smith-Milner torched Gilas for 25 points in Auckland in an 87-70 rout during the Asia Cup qualifiers cycle. Jordan Natai rifled in 5 three-pointers in a 94-86 New Zealand win in Jeddah. These are not mythologized names. They are real players who have made real contributions in real games against this Philippine team. The Tall Blacks have perimeter shooters who can punish any defensive miscommunication, and they rebound with the collective tenacity that comes from a program with genuine culture and organizational continuity under Flavel. New Zealand is not ranked 25th in the world by accident. Which brings everything back, as it always does, to the man who has already proven he can solve this particular puzzle. The one game. The one win. The November 2024 evidence. Sotto's 19-10-7 in that 93-89 victory were not just numbers, they were the tactical blueprint. He anchored the paint, relieving Fajardo from the most punishing defensive responsibilities. He passed from the high post in ways that exposed New Zealand's drop coverage. He converted when the moment demanded conversion. And crucially, he enabled Gilas to out-rebound the Tall Blacks 44-31, a differential of 13 boards that essentially made the rest of the game executable. Without that interior control, everything else falls apart. The outside shots don't carry enough weight to absorb the pressure. The defense can't hold when the other team is getting second and third opportunities. Flavel said, after the February win, that July is going to be another big challenge. He was not wrong. He expects a different game. He is essentially acknowledging, in diplomatic but transparent language, that Kai Sotto changes the matchup in ways that his coaching staff will need to prepare for seriously. Gilas, for its part, has to make a decision that extends beyond basketball. It has to decide, collectively, organizationally, medically, whether July is the right moment to bring Sotto back into the fold, knowing that rushing a player back from ACL surgery on the road, in a critical qualifier, carries its own risks. There is the physical risk of re-injury. There is the strategic risk of a player who is not yet at full rhythm being exposed in high-leverage moments. And then there is the risk of not bringing him, the risk of going to Auckland without your most transformative piece and hoping that Fajardo and Edu and Milora Brown can combine to produce what one player produces when healthy. That is an enormous ask. Step back from the immediate calendar for a moment. Lift the lens from the third window specifically and look at the broader picture that Kai Sotto's career represents for Philippine basketball, because this story is not really just about a qualifier in Auckland in July. It is about something much larger and much more patient. The Philippines has had exactly one player in its modern history capable of competing at the center position against the elite internationals of Oceania and the Middle East on relatively equal physical terms. Andre Blach served that function for a time as a naturalized player, and his contributions to the 2014 FIBA World Cup squad in Spain were real and significant. Blach was, at his best, a genuinely talented interior presence who gave Gilas a weapon they had never possessed. But Sotto is different. Sotto is Filipino. He grew up in the same basketball culture that produced Junmar Fajardo and Scotty Thompson and the entire PBA tradition of guard-heavy, fast-paced, perimeter-oriented play. He understands the identity of this team in a way that a naturalized player, however talented and however willing, cannot fully replicate. When Sotto puts on that Gilas jersey, the national team sees itself in him in a way that is genuinely rare. He is also, it bears remembering, 23 years old. The ACL injury, devastating as it has been in terms of lost time and competitive rhythm, does not define a career that is still in its early chapters. Players have come back from torn ACLs and been better, genuinely, measurably better, because the rehabilitation process forces a kind of structural reckoning with the body that produces, in some athletes, a deeper understanding of how to move, how to land, how to protect themselves from the angles that create vulnerability. There is no guarantee Sotto emerges from this stronger. But there is no certainty that he doesn't either. The Philippines' qualification narrative for the 2027 FIBA World Cup in Qatar will ultimately be written in the next few months. If Sotto returns in July and delivers in Auckland, if he replicates, or even approximates, what he did in November 2024, the conversation about this program changes significantly. Gilas going to a World Cup on the road, in New Zealand, without full preparation, without home crowd advantage, and winning anyway, with a healthy Sotto, would represent a genuine step forward. Not just a qualifying result. A statement about where Philippine basketball stands, and where it is capable of going. And the destination beyond that qualifier matters enormously. The 2028 Los Angeles Olympics. A Games held, for the first time, in the city most identified with professional basketball, in the arena where Magic Johnson built his legacy, where Kobe Bryant built his, where LeBron James now has a franchise bearing his fingerprints. The Olympics in Los Angeles would represent the most visible possible stage for a Filipino basketball program that has been building, incrementally, toward exactly this kind of moment for 15 years. The highest-placing Asian team in Qatar earns the direct entry. That road runs directly through New Zealand in July. Some questions in basketball resist clean resolution. Some narratives refuse to close neatly. Whether Sotto arrives in Auckland healthy enough, sharp enough, and trusted enough by his own body to make the difference, that remains genuinely open. What is not open is the history. The record shows 1-7, with the one inscribed in a single performance from a single player on a single November night. The Tall Blacks know it. Judd Flavel knows it. Tim Cohn knows it. The 11,000 people who were inside MOA Arena that night know it. And somewhere in Japan, working on his conditioning, rebuilding the trust between his mind and his right knee, Kai Sotto knows it too. Whether that knowledge translates into action in Auckland in July is the question that will define Gilas Pilipinas' path to the world stage, and perhaps, in the long arc of things, the shape of Philippine basketball's next decade. There are moments in a sport's history that hinge on the health of a single body. That is uncomfortable to say. But it is true, and the truest things in basketball rarely come wrapped in comfort.